Welcome back to The Contender. I'm Congresswoman Erin Houchin. Today's episode comes at a time of great sorrow, the tragic passing of Charlie Kirk. He was a once-in-a-generation leader, a bold voice for faith, family, and freedom, the values that make this nation strong. Charlie made a lifetime's worth of impact in his short 31 years, and we are grateful for it. Please continue to lift his family and loved ones in prayer, especially his wife Erica and their 2 children. With that, I am honored today to shift today's conversation to another strong conservative voice who I serve with in the U.S. House of Representatives, Congressman Nathaniel Moran from Texas. Congressman Moran has dedicated his career to serving his community. Nathaniel, Judge, thank you for joining me today.
Erin, Congressman Houchin, it's a pleasure to be with you today. And I'm so glad and thankful that you started with some comments about Charlie Kirk and his legacy and the life that he lived. Remarkable in 31 years for him to leave that legacy. But it's a legacy of truth. It's a legacy of a foundation of principle, one of dignity and respect and conversation that we certainly need to see happening in the United States, and one, unfortunately, that we've let go. So he was a real example. One of the things that people back home have told me over and over again as I've talked about Charlie since his death is that his love for American exceptionalism never waned. And that's truly remarkable because there's so many today that have forgotten that America has to be strong, and part of America's strength is in those conversations, those tough conversations that we're having.
One of the things that I think has struck me over the last several days is some of the hateful rhetoric that has come out after his death, and just really unconscionable things being said. It's an illustration to me of how divided or how far apart we are as a country. I went to his vigil in D.C. last night and got stopped by a reporter afterward. And the reporter was asking me about people losing their jobs over some of the things that they've been saying. And really my response has just been, I think that we've lost some of our humanity behind a computer screen, and we need to get out from behind that and do what Charlie would have wanted everyone to do, which is to have a respectful conversation. So I hope that this will be a turning point for those conversations to happen, because really, honestly, from my perspective here in our perspective in the House, what I see is a lot of dishonesty from some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I see a media that repeats some of the dishonesty, and social media platforms that amplify it. And everybody gets into their own universe, and we have to start talking to each other again.
Yeah, when you no longer meet face to face to have those conversations, and you hide behind a computer screen, that's when we begin to see each other less than human, and we begin to see each other with less than the equal and the eternal value that God created each one of us with. And when we devalue the life of the person that we are supposed to be talking with, then that's when violence like what we saw happens. And we've got to continue to have that interface so that the humanity between the two conversations can exist, and we can see each other with dignity and with respect. And I find that back home, and when I meet with folks one-on-one, and you do too, that's why we go back home. That's why we love our district work periods, is we get to go back home and have the tough conversations. And it's interesting when you start to have those conversations face to face, the temperature of the room comes down, the conflict comes down, and then there's understanding of, oh, I see why you voted a certain way. I may disagree with it still, but I certainly understand.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I always say I much prefer being in Washington County than Washington, D.C.
Indeed.
It's great to go home because you can have those face-to-face conversations. I remember one time I was in the state legislature, and I had some teachers who were pretty vitriolic on my Facebook page. I had posted a picture of walking my son into kindergarten, and they were pretty hateful. So I reached out and said, can I come to your class and do a segment on how a bill becomes a law, and could we talk? When I showed up, I met with these teachers, and they said they were ashamed that they didn't realize that I would read those comments. So I think you're right. I think we have to get our humanity back, and I know Charlie would take, I think, a Friday or a Saturday or both off of his cell phone, and I think we could all benefit from that.
Indeed.
So tell me about the district that you represent in Texas.
Well, the first district in Texas, I think, is aptly named because I believe that we are the best district in Texas. That's what I happen to believe. It's 17 counties in Northeast Texas. It's very different than what most people see in their mind's eye when they hear about Texas. So it's not West Texas. We've got pine trees, lakes, roses, azaleas.
So for Hoosiers, when you say it's not West Texas, tell us what that means. So
Yeah.
West Texas must be more arid?
West Texas is much more arid, and that's where I went to school, Texas Tech in Lubbock. It's about 452 miles to the dot, actually, from my house, way out to Lubbock, Texas. But my district is full of water, lots of rain, again, full of pine trees, lots of natural beauty out there. I've got more trees in my backyard than probably Jody Arrington has in all of his district. In West
Jody
Texas.
Arrington represents West Texas.
Yeah. So that's it's a funny thing to talk about because most of the time you think about John Wayne on his horse doing a cattle drive. That's not East Texas.
So Texas Tech, we have a tie there back to Indiana as well. Bobby Knight moved from Indiana, coaching IU basketball, down to Texas Tech. How was he received? How was Coach Knight received down in Texas?
Well, I can tell you firsthand because I was there in law school when Bobby Knight came to do his press conference when they announced that he was coming to be the basketball coach. And I was fortunate enough, the law school was right beside the arena, and the law school parking was only reserved for law school students. So for the announcement and for all the games there, I got front row parking because I could park with my law school parking pass and just walk over to the United Spirit Arena. But they loved him there. And he was a perfect companion for Mike Leach, who was the football coach at the time. So we had great personalities in football and in basketball at the time. Well loved, well received. The community embraced him. And as I understand, he loved the community as well.
Yeah.
Certainly Indiana was where his heart was. But we loved him in Lubbock, Texas. We were sad to see him go.
So I was at IU when he left, when he was let go from the coaching staff there, and you were in law school at Texas Tech when he started. That's pretty.
Right.
And now here we are today.
It was an exciting time. I remember distinctly the announcement, and the arena had not been that full, even for a game, in years. But when he showed up, things changed.
I always said you didn't see an IU basketball game until you saw Bobby Knight get kicked out of one. I was fortunate to see him get a technical and get ejected from a game once. So I'm pretty proud of his legacy. He made IU basketball what it is today. Pleased to see that he had some success at Texas Tech too.
He did. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your career path. I was reading that your father was also an elected official and a preacher.
That's right.
So talk about how you grew up and what led you into service.
Yeah, really, I love the word service, so thank you for that. Really, my path to public service started as a young man when my parents moved from Arizona to Texas in 1976. My parents are originally from Illinois, so right next door to Indiana.
See, I knew that you had some Midwestern.
I've got Midwestern blood running all through me. And both my mom and my dad grew up right near Effingham, Illinois, on each side of Effingham. And they met when my dad was preaching tent revivals in the summer. And my mom was singing in a little trio. And so that's how they first got started. And then they ended up in Bible college in Arizona. And then they ended up in Texas helping to start a Bible college in the mid-'70s. And that's how I got there. But throughout our time growing up in the little trailer home that we had in the middle of nowhere country on this Bible college campus, my parents taught us early on, me and my three brothers, each of you has a special call in this life. Find that call, but they assured us that call involved service to God and service to others. And so they said, no matter what you do, you've got to find a way to serve God and serve others. Now, I've got one brother in education, one that went the business route, one that went engineering, and then I went the direction of public service. And throughout each one of those venues, we found a way to serve. I really felt called to public service in about the fourth grade when Ronald Reagan was running for his second term in office. My dad took me to a rally, and I was really excited about it. And it got in my heart, and I knew instantly that's what I wanted to do. And my dad was the mayor, as you said, of a little town called White House, Texas. That was after I graduated high school, and it was really, just a little bitty town. I think at the time about 3,500 people.
Oh my goodness.
So just a small town. Still my hometown. That's where my kids go to school. That's where I went to school. It's where Patrick Mahomes went to school. So,
really?
Oh yeah. So anybody that knows anything about football these days knows the name Patrick Mahomes.
Been having a rough season so far.
Well, 0-2 is not a great way to start, but I've got great faith that he's going to pull it out. He's such a great example of steadiness and good decision making, even at the level that he is at, of personally keeping himself on the right track.
So Patrick Mahomes from your town, your little town, you've come from there, a member of Congress and a Super Bowl champion quarterback. Pretty amazing for a little bitty town.
Pretty amazing. I could try to convince you that Patrick was the second best quarterback to ever come out of White House.
Wait a minute.
But I'm
Is that
pretty sure
because you were the quarterback?
that might be because I was the quarterback 21 years before he was. But I can assure you, his very worst game was better than my best game.
I was going to say, if you just hadn't gone into politics, Nathaniel, you could have been.
If I wasn't slow, if I could throw the ball better, if I made better decisions, maybe all that.
Maybe, change that up. That's great. We've just wrapped up our August district work period. You mentioned being able to go home and meet with constituents. What stood out to you when you were at home this August, and what are you hearing from your constituents?
One of the things that stood out to me the most was the need for us to continue to talk about the successes of the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cuts Bill. What we really need to be able to do is remind people about what we did successfully in that bill to keep their taxes low, to cut spending, to rein in some of the regulatory burdens, because people are going to see some of the tax benefits in their 2025 taxes when they file them next year, but they won't remember that we kept them from seeing the largest tax increase in American history from hitting their pocketbooks. And so we've got to continually remind them of that this bill in and of itself really was more legislative wins than we probably had the prior 4 years put together.
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing that I certainly tried to convey when I was back home in the district too, is that, if we had not passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut Act, if we had not passed that, every single American would have seen their taxes dramatically increase, the largest increase in American history, in December when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expired.
That's right.
But not only did we not allow the taxes to go up, we permanently extended the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which means that this is the tax base policy baseline moving forward.
Yeah.
And we did it in a way that was fiscally responsible.
That's right.
Do we have still our long-term deficit and debt problems to tackle? Absolutely, we do. But we counted on a modest amount of growth, and at 2.6%, about $2.5 trillion. We cut spending, and we were able to do that and give tax permanency. All in all, a very remarkable win that I think, in some ways has been overshadowed by the false and misinformation that has come out from Democrats on the other side of the aisle.
That's right. And I think as time goes across the table this next year, people are going to see that the scaring tactics about people losing their Medicaid benefits, the elderly, the disabled, it's not going to happen. It's not going to bear out. But what is going to bear out is additional liberty. I happen to believe philosophically that the lower our taxes are, the more liberty we have as individuals, as families, as businesses. And what we did in this One Big Beautiful Bill was we restored liberty. That's what we did. And the people need liberty. It's their tax dollars, first of all, and you and I both know that. I know you know that. It's not our money. It's the people's money. And so just because we are the government doesn't mean we should all automatically then decide we can decide what's best to do with that money. We need to give it back to folks and let them decide what to do with it. Their hard work, their good decisions should govern their future, not government. And so that's what I think we did in this bill was we restored liberty. For businesses, we also restored certainty, and that was really important when we talk about bonus depreciation and the Section 199A, which impacts all of these 90+% businesses in the United States that are pass-through entities that would have seen a double amount of taxes next year. We prevented that from happening. That means small businesses are going to grow. Small businesses are the engine of our economy. So many pro-business provisions that got passed through that provide certainty and liberty for all our families, our farmers, and our businesses.
Yes. In particular, the estate tax is one that I think about. The estate tax repeal, the death tax repeal, it's in the One Big Beautiful Bill, so that farmers and others, small business owners, can leave their businesses to the next generation and not have to owe so much to the government. That always was confounding to me, that you work your whole life, you build something, and at the end of your life, you have to give it back to the government.
That's right.
And the government never created it.
Even though you were taxed on it throughout your lifetime. One of my favorite memories growing up was going to the Fisher Farm in Champaign-Urbana area every year. They were effectively my grandparents, not by blood, but by love. And every year I spent 2 weeks on that Fisher Farm and fed the goats and helped to milk the cows and do all the things that you should be doing on a farm. And it was a great corn and bean farm there in the Champaign-Urbana area. And I would hate to see farmers like that work so hard, that toiled, that put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, to have to give that up.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were able to do that. And then also border security. Liberty goes back to that too. I mean, we have to have border security and safety and national security, and we increased spending for defense and for border security in the bill, which will be a direct influence on our ability to be free here in the United States.
Yeah, isn't it amazing what we've already seen already? 90% decrease at the very least of the types of encounters we saw last year, just because we have a strong president in the Oval Office saying, hey, guess what? We're going to enforce the law.
Yeah.
And these laws are on our books, but we're going to back up our border security folks and say to them, we want to let you do your job. And not only are we going to let you do your job and support you in that effort, but we're going to give you additional agents and additional resources for technology, for walls, and for personnel, those 3 things we need to keep our borders secure and our nation sovereign. Critically important. And guess what? It didn't take anything more, really, frankly, than a strong president. Now, what we need to do is make sure to codify those things so that a future president cannot undo them like we saw the last 4 years.
Yeah, when President Trump, we were in the House chamber when he did an address to a joint session of Congress, and one of the first things he said was, it turns out you didn't need a new bill to secure the border, you just needed a new president.
Yeah, I thought it was the best line of the night.
Yeah, it was great.
Yep.
Speaking of the southern border in particular, but also the northern border, tariffs had a role to play in border security, asking Mexico and Canada to step up their enforcement and sending their own troops to help us secure the border, to help stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States, to help deter terrorists who are coming into the country. We've seen the effect of those tariffs at the southern and the northern border. And I know that President Trump had intentions that Canada would step up enforcement, but then we saw increases in fentanyl coming across the northern border. We saw increases in the number of people on the terror watch list coming across the northern border. We talk a lot about the southern border in Mexico and all the problems that we had down there prior to President Trump, but President Trump has been firm in his stance that these 2 countries that border the United States have to play a part. And I, for one, was pleased that he was willing to put tariffs on the table as a way to encourage their cooperation.
Yeah, it's influence. And you're going to see more of that coming in the next year when we talk about the USMCA, because we are at a flex point where we can try to renegotiate some of those terms, and you're going to see that, and appropriately so. The way the president has used tariffs on the short term to bring other countries to the table has been remarkable. And the number of countries that have come to the table already, I mean, we're talking about the EU, we got Japan, Korea, we've got Vietnam, Indonesia, India, Canada, Mexico. You can name so many influential countries around the world that are important to important partners in large respects. Most of them are. That's important for us to have those economic ties, but also to have parity and reciprocity in how we treat each other. And that has not been the case. You know that most of the tariff policy that we're living under today was set post-World War II. That was a time when the rest of the world needed a hand up. Most of the world was recovering. We had a very strong economy at the time, and so we gave preference to these other countries to help build them up. Well, they're fine now, and in many instances, they are taking advantage of the United States in some ways that were unintended. So we need to reset those tariff and trade negotiations. The president's doing that. I think when we get that done in the next 6 to 8 or 9 months with most of those countries, you're going to see certainty on the international plane, which you want to see. And that's going to give businesses certainty both on the tax side and the trade and tariff side. And the economy is going to boom after that, in my opinion.
I agree.
And we're going to have fairness in what we're seeing around the world. Now, we need to continue to hit strongly against people like China with our tariff policies to make sure that we put teeth into them. And I understand we may have a deal working pretty quickly with China. If that's the case, we need to make sure that there is a hammer that's waiting when and if they try to cheat or circumvent that. And I have a suspicion they probably will.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about your expertise there too. But first, I want to just touch on the Trust Act that you've filed. We did in the One Big Beautiful Bill. We were focused on trying to not add to the long-term debt. But one of the things that we didn't do is we didn't count on tariff revenue to go toward the cost of the bill. We didn't count on any of the DOGE savings to go toward the cost of the bill. It was purely growth and spending cuts, which makes the Trust Act, I think, even more important if we are utilizing our tariff revenue to pay down our long-term debt. Talk to us about the Trust Act and why you felt compelled to file the bill.
Yeah, certainly proud to do that in the past couple of weeks. And here's what the Trust Act does. The Trust Act says, look, to the extent that there is increased tariff revenue after fiscal year 25, which ends in just a couple of weeks, use fiscal year 25 as a baseline and say, look, we understand that that money is kind of captured for existing spending. Let's not fight about that for right now, but to the extent we get additional revenue in future years that exceeds that base amount, and we are in a year where there is a debt and deficit issue, which we know is going to be for a while, then all of that excess money gets set aside into a trust account that is only used for one purpose, and that is to pay down the national debt. I think it's critical for us to set that marker now, because what will happen, is if we get excess revenues, which we do expect, those excess revenues otherwise would go to the general fund, and guess what? They get spent. They're going to get spent by either Republicans or Democrats, probably both of us, in different ways, but they will get spent in a way that diverts it from the real purpose or real need, and that is paying down the debt.
I think that's terrific. I really appreciate your leadership on it and thoughtfulness in bringing it to the table. I hope that we'll see it soon. I think it's a great bill. And of course, we're always concerned about our long-term debt. You mentioned Jody Arrington. I told him if anything should befall me, make a T-shirt that says balance the budget, do it for Erin. And you know how much he cares about reversing the curse of our long-term debt. I really appreciate your leadership on that bill. So you serve on the Ways and Means Committee.
I do.
I would say it's the second best committee in Congress.
You would say that. Somebody on ENC would say that.
Yes, ENC is the best committee in Congress. But I'm sure Nathaniel thinks otherwise. So does Chairman Jason Smith of the Ways and Means Committee.
One of us may serve on the committee, the only committee that was mentioned in the Constitution. I won't say which served on that, but.
I'm on the Rules Committee, so that's I think they say it's the longest serving select committee that we have.
Yep.
But you're also on the China Select Committee.
I am. Yeah.
So tell us in the moments that we have left, just tell us what do the American people need to know about the threat of China?
It's the biggest external threat we have. The biggest internal threat right now is the debt and deficit, which is what we've talked about. And by the way, I have a balanced budget amendment for the Constitution that we had pushed 2 years ago and almost got a hearing on before we
I'm signed on to that.
Yeah, and so now it's back up, and we want to hopefully push that. I think there needs to be a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution,
me
and
too.
so we're pushing hard on that. But that's our internal threat, because we could collapse ourselves over our debt and our spending. But external threat is China, and what China's trying to do, and what they have been doing for decades, is isolating us, and we've been letting them do it in a number of economic ways, in a number of military ways. Just consider this: last year, China built more ships than we've built since World War II. So shipbuilding is pretty important, but we've let ourselves forget how to do that, and we've regulated ourselves to death in a number of industries like shipbuilding, so that now China does it much more efficiently and is doing it much more fervently than we are, and we've forgotten that skill set. You can name a number of different areas that are like that in our economy. They've also made strategic partnerships with other countries around the world for critical minerals, and it's because the United States just simply took themselves out of the game, and those countries needed a partner, and then they ended up with China. We have to be involved internationally, and we have to have these partnerships. These economic partnerships will drive foreign policy, which will prevent military conflict. That's what we want to see. AI is the other big topic with China. We are in a race, an arms race with China these days, and getting artificial intelligence systems to a point, this red line of where they can program and think for themselves in a way that they no longer need human involvement. We're not there yet, but whichever of us get there first, China or the United States, they'll never get caught, because then there is exponential growth in the learning that the person that comes second cannot overcome.
And the threat of, I would say, misinformation being fed into the learning model. For instance, if Tiananmen Square, China might say that was just a festival.
That's right.
Instead of what actually happened there, and the tragedies that happened there. And we don't want their learning model influencing the hearts and minds of our U.S. citizens, which is why we've been so concerned about TikTok.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that at all?
Yeah, and it's because the more information they have about us, they know more of how they need to influence us. And we're actually working on another anti-China bill that would say not just TikTok, but all the other ways that they are gathering our personal information. We've got to prevent that. And not just that, but all these little devices that they are putting in our pieces of technology, or they are putting in our infrastructure, our pipelines, our water, our sewer, our electric. You know, there's a lot of pieces that have a software component to them that comes from China, either the physical or the software piece does. And we're letting those pieces now integrate themselves into every aspect of our lives. And that could be detrimental if China decided they just wanted to tweak it and turn it off.
What do you say to the teenager who says, I don't care if China has my personal information?
They're short-sighted. They're not thinking strategically like China is thinking, and that's long-term. And they simply don't understand the risk that's out there. And that's what you and I are hired to do, is to have that understanding. Sometimes there's confidential briefings that we get of the high level of the threat and the risk that's out there, and for us to understand that the principle that we're propagating is the principle our constituents want us to do, but we're able to apply those facts that maybe our teenagers don't have, and a lot of times don't have.
Well, the general public doesn't have, right? We have had classified briefings. It's really hard to say, trust us. This is not great, and we need to find a workaround. Which I'm grateful that President Trump has been trying to work on that.
Yeah, trusting Congress is hard.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure though we're still a little bit ahead of China, and
I think so. I hope so. One of the last questions that I usually ask is, this podcast is The Contender. Thank you for being a contender, not only for your district, but for the United States of America in your service in Congress. You do this you do have a young family back home in Texas, and as I have, my family's back home in Indiana, and it is hard service. So we're grateful for that. And I certainly am so grateful to count you as a friend here on the Hill.
Thank you.
You've been one of my first friends. We met, I think, before we were even elected,
right.
When you and I met. And because of your judge background, I kind of was partial to your point of view, being married to a judge and understanding that criminal justice and element.
Yeah.
But who is a contender in your life? Contenders are, for us, is someone that, really like a Charlie Kirk, that moves forward despite obstacles, despite challenges, and does that service above self, really digging into the challenges ahead at sometimes risk and potentially for very little reward. So who is a contender for you? Who have you learned from? Tell us a story about that person.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about my two brothers, two of my brothers, my closest brothers, two of my three brothers, and each one of them, as I mentioned early in the podcast, have found their own way to serve. And what we have talked about over time is steadiness and service, not letting our emotions guide or push our decision making, but simply being rooted in the Judeo-Christian ethic and principles of the Holy Scripture. My brother, who's a superintendent now out in West Texas of a public school, has done that in his lane, and I love watching the way he loves people. He is so good with people to be empathetic and to listen, and so from him I learned those lessons. And then I look at my other brother, who I'm so close with, who strategically understands how to build consensus and how to strategically align a problem and find a solution to it and push forward. So from each of my two brothers, I can see in them my dad and my mom, and my dad who taught me really how to love God in front of people, and then my mom who really taught me how to love people in front of God. And that's how I mirror those two. My mother with the sweetest heart there was, my dad as the best Bible teacher I ever had and ever saw. And so from all of those close familial relationships, I gather strength and I gather wisdom, because when I'm in a room with them, I feel like I'm the lesser of any of the leaders in the room. And we were together this weekend for my mom's 79th birthday.
Oh,
and,
happy birthday. What's your mom's name?
Marjorie is her name.
Marjorie?
From Toledo, Illinois.
From Toledo, Illinois. Marjorie Moran. Happy birthday. That's amazing. And knowing you, when you're telling that story about your family, I can see all of that in you. And all of those qualities that you have pulled together and learned from to be the member that you are today and the man that you are today. I can see that. I think that's really incredible.
I appreciate that. And I so appreciate getting to serve with you. I did meet you and your mom on the corner of Independence Avenue.
That's right.
And I remember that distinctly, how impressed I was with you at the time. And again, that you surrounding yourself with your family, and then having gotten to know you since then. Indiana is really fortunate to have you standing in their stead on their behalf here in Washington, D.C., undeterred by the winds or the waves that are around us, but simply guided by the principles that they would have you to support.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank our guest, Congressman Nathaniel Moran, for joining me and for your strong leadership on behalf of Texas and the nation. You are a true contender. To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share the podcast, and stay inspired to contend, work hard, and have fun. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.